OpenAI has launched a full-blown browser. The competitive positioning versus Google is basically all-out war.
Today, we're going to launch ChatGPT Atlas. This is an AI-powered web browser built around ChatGPT. We think that AI represents like a rare once-a-decade opportunity to rethink what a browser can be about.
Okay, great. But Google's going to come in and do at least this and, take back any market share they lose.
I don't think we should think of it as a product. I think we should think of it as a distribution channel for OpenAI's superintelligence. Having a local agent mode, I think, is potentially transformative.
If Sam wins the data aggregation race, if he falls behind for a month or a year in the AI race, he still has your data.
We're going to have an AI that is our personal portal into everything. And I'm not going to care what browser I use. I'm just going to be able to have a conversation with my AI, and it will pull up the data from wherever it is, whether it's using superintelligence from, OpenAI or Google.
Now that's a moonshot, ladies and gentlemen.
Everybody, welcome to Moonshots, another episode of WTF Just Happened in Tech. I'm here with my moonshot mates, Dave Blundin and AWG, Alex Wissner-Gross. Good morning, gentlemen.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
Hey, and a huge shout out to the team. We were going to shoot this podcast last night, and Alex had so much material that happened in the last 3 days that we just needed to get in here. I mean, things are changing so quickly. So basically, the team pulled an all-nighter last night to pull together these stories, and it's epic. So thank you, team, behind the scenes.
Yeah, right now, our fourth moonshot mate, Salim, is on an airplane. I just spent the last 4 days with him here in Calamigos in Malibu for XPRIZE Visioneering 2025, which is a story I want to open up with. Dave, I wish you were here. Alex, I wish you were here. It was awesome. So for those who don't know, XPRIZE every year gets together our brain trust and our benefactors, and we debate and we discuss what are the problems that aren't being solved that need to be solved, or what are the challenges that are too far out and we need to accelerate them and bring them forward. And that's Visioneering. It was an amazing 2.5, well, really 4 days in total, but 2.5 days in which we raised, Dave, you're on my board here at XPRIZE. We raised $3.5 million of capital last night. So,
Right.
so that
Do that
was,
every night. That's $1 billion a year.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And someday
Hey,
we
well,
will.
Just so the audience knows the sacrifices Peter makes to bring you all of this information. So he's on stage all day yesterday. Tomorrow boards a flight to Riyadh, so we'll be in Saudi. He'll be on stage the day after that with Eric Schmidt kicking off that event. That's 10 time zones away. So watch the footage of him from Riyadh and see what that looks like.
How
Man,
wired
what a
will I be
workaholic.
on caffeine? Oh my God, it's great. But we announced yesterday the our impact report for XPRIZE, and the numbers are staggering. We have massive detailed report, and it's we every dollar invested in a prize, we get a 60x return. So $1 million prize is driving $60 million of R&D invested by all the teams. They're all optimistic. They all think they can win. And they're all sort of like a Darwinian evolution to go and solve these problems. So super pumped about that. But I want to report, this is the first group to hear about it on who won XPRIZE Visioneering. So we enter the 2.5 day program with about 20 concepts. We have 5 different domains, 5 different grand challenge areas, and we've got 4 concepts per. We narrowed down to 2 and then down to 1, which leaves us with 5 that enter the battle royale, as we call it. And we go from 5 to 3, and then last night we got down, well, let me just show you the numbers here. So XPRIZE Visioneering winners for 2025, we were expecting to just have one of these prizes get funded to go into development. It turned out all 3 of these got funded to go into development. Let me mention what they are, because I'm very proud of them. The first prize is called Abundance, and which, gotta love the name. And it was actually 2 of our Abundance 360 members who proposed this and raised the capital to get this going. So what is the Abundance X Prize? It is deliver to a community food, water, housing, electricity and bandwidth for $250 a month. That's the goal. So
Cool.
everything that you basically need. And, the conversation last night, we can talk about this, is uh, there's potential for a lot of civil unrest, right? As people start losing jobs, as, subgroups start becoming wealthier. And we've talked about this. I'm absolutely clear in the next decade, we're going to have, extraordinary abundance, uplifting everybody. But it's this turbulent period of the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years that's concerning. And the idea here is, if all of a sudden moms and dads have all of their bases covered, you know, the basics of life for $250 a month, then they can start to think about, okay, how do I use AI? How do I use this technology to be an entrepreneur, to create a better life? Any thoughts on that, Dave?
Well, especially that last fundamental of food, water, shelter, bandwidth. If you're
Yes.
going to contribute in this global revolution, I love the fact that they added that as a fundamental necessity. Inside the $250 limit, that's just such a great idea. But that unlocks your ability to contribute, to make a living, to get educated. All education will move to AI, so you can have the
Healthcare
best
is going to move to
degree-
AI. Yeah.
Healthcare, all of that ties to bandwidth. So it really is a fundamental necessity, and I love it.
Yeah, Alex, any thoughts?
Yeah, this sounds a lot like a universal basic services concept, UBS, as
Yes.
sort of the symmetric dual to UBI, universal basic income. I'm very bullish on universal basic services in general. I think I would expect it's an artifact of a mature economy, that the cost of living can be driven down to near zero as part of a sort of lifestyle subscription, an Amazon super prime, if you will.
Yeah, no, super excited about
There's
this.
a lot of studies that say that universal basic income backfires in terms of it causes depression, causes alcoholism, causes drug use. But services, where you actually get the things you need to survive, still encourages you to work and contribute on top of those services. It's a much better idea. But
Yeah.
we learned in our pregame here that Alex doesn't even use caffeine, so I don't know how that's possible.
That caffeine is a universal basic service for sure. So this won the most capital last night, and it's going into prize development. I'll report on it. We'll have this team at the Abundance Summit. Both of them are Abundance members, and we'll talk about it. The second prize, surprisingly, that got top honors and received enough capital to go into development, is a Fusion XPRIZE. And so here I am thinking, okay, there are 37 venture-backed fusion companies. There's been about $10 billion invested into fusion. What do they need a fusion prize for? And amazingly, and I met with, there were 4 fusion companies, 4, solidly funded ongoing fusion companies, as well as some of the top faculty, one professor from MIT, and saying, no, we need an XPRIZE to move this forward. We need the public to understand how this important this is, and how the government needs to come in and support it. So this one is not fully defined as a prize, but $500,000 was committed to develop the prize and move it forward into potentially a prize. Alex, I think you have some feelings about this one.
Yeah, I think Fusion is already well capitalized, but I would say ultimately, to the extent that the limits of economic growth are bound by our ability to solve fusion, I think on the margin, it would be more helpful to allocate more capital toward fusion energy sources, and perhaps this helps with that.
Alex, you know what happens after this visioneering phase is the world's greatest experts on the topic all get together, in the Peterverse, and then they contribute all their ideas. And then not all of them get from there to actually being a prize, but you learn so much about the state of what's happening along the way. So I love it when a topic like fusion gets through this part of the funnel, regardless of how it ends up, because the amount of information we'll bring back into the podcast on this will be just immense.
It's interesting. The CEO of Commonwealth Fusion, Bob Mumgardner, is going to be with us in Riyadh, and he's going to be on stage with me at the Abundance 360 Summit in March. And I was on the phone with him getting ready for what we're going to be doing in Riyadh next week. And he said, listen, I heard that you're talking about a Fusion XPRIZE. I am so excited about that. And so here we have the best funded, most advanced fusion company actually excited about a Fusion XPRIZE. So I'm excited to dig in further. All right, the third prize is actually something I love. It's called Wall-E. We'll have to be, in debate and discussion with Disney about this. But here's the prize: dump a machine into a garbage dump, and the machine sorts the trash and generates, piles of metals and foods and paper. And basically, can we take our current, uh, you know, what do you want to call them, landfills, and actually reutilize them? So I have the way I would actually win it, but I don't know. I think this is a convergence of technologies. It's going to be AI, it's going to be robotics, it's going to be material sciences. Any thoughts, Dave?
Alex brought us, Alex keeps bringing us deal after deal after deal, and every one of them so far has been a winner. So it's really exciting. But Alex, you brought us that rare earth company. You want to talk about that? And I learned a lot about this just studying that company.
Maybe just a broader comment on the space. I think there is such a long tail of physical world service jobs that are ripe for automation, not just limited to repurposing junkyards, as it were. But I think if you look around the world today, I often sort of look out in the street and you can ponder, where are all the robots? We're supposed to be living in the future. Why haven't we seen anything that looks facially transformative when you look out in the street? I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we will look out onto the street and we will see an abundance of robots and physical automation that enables communities to be visually transformed, aesthetics that would otherwise be out of reach for an economy our size. As the economy starts to grow radically, we'll start to deploy robots everywhere for even the most minor tasks that would be otherwise economically inaccessible today. So I think this is actually just maybe a special case of a much broader opportunity over the next 5 to 10 years of just deploying automation everywhere.
Every week, my team and I study the top 10 technology megatrends that will transform industries over the decade ahead. I cover trends ranging from humanoid robotics, AGI, and quantum computing to transport, energy, longevity, and more. There's no fluff. Only the most important stuff that matters, that impacts our lives, our companies, and our careers. If you want me to share these metatrends with you, I write a newsletter twice a week, sending it out as a short 2-minute read via email. And if you want to discover the most important metatrends 10 years before anyone else, this report's for you. Readers include founders and CEOs from the world's most disruptive companies and entrepreneurs building the world's most disruptive tech. It's not for you if you don't want to be informed about what's coming, why it matters, and how you can benefit from it. To subscribe for free, go to Diamandis.com/metatrends to gain access to the trends 10 years before anyone else. All right, now back to this episode. I just want a robot, just walking up and down the I-10 freeway, the 405, picking up the trash on the side of the road. But the idea that we can actually take our landfills, which have so many different problems, and everything from methane production to just, disease, and we're sending so much of our trash overseas to Southeast Asia with heavy metals. I mean, the idea that we can actually use it as a feedstock is amazing. So I don't want to belabor the point. Congratulations to the teams that won XPRIZE Visioneering. Congratulations to Nusa Ansari and the entire leadership team of XPRIZE. It was an awesome 2.5 days. And we recorded a podcast, which we dropped a couple of days ago. So, we had Imad Mustak and Eric Poulier, Salim, and myself doing a podcast. Hopefully everyone listening has heard that one. We're going to be expanding on some of the ideas because I want to make sure to bring in the brilliance and vision of AWG and Dave. All right, let's move on. The main course today, AI chips and data centers, as it is every day. All right, do you want to introduce this video, Dave, or AWG?
Yeah, so this is one of the reasons we needed to get together quickly. This just came out. So OpenAI has launched a full-blown browser. The functionality, it won't blow you away yet, but the positioning, the competitive positioning versus Google is basically all-out war. So I went back and researched. Google launched Chrome. Chrome was not in the world. People don't remember this, and they leveraged their user base to install it. And now they have 2/3 market share of browsers. And so this is people's point of contact with information, goes through Google. They get to see everything you do. Then later on, they turned on Chrome Sync, so they watch everywhere you navigate. All that information goes back into Google's great AI machine and serves you ads. Brilliant. and kind of scary. So then OpenAI, Sam being the strategic genius that he is, says, okay, this is one of those fundamental Bill Gates style points of control we absolutely have to play in the browser game. So we're going to launch the Atlas browser, and what's going to make it better than Chrome is it's going to learn what you like and don't like far, far better and use our AI advantage to serve up better ideas. And the integration of GPT and what you're browsing will be completely seamless. It'll be advising you, it'll be taking you to the next website, it'll be curating your news, all through that integrated Atlas AI browser.
It'll be taking your data.
Yeah, that too. I mean, that's the key, right?
Let's watch a short video of Sam and his team announcing Atlas, and then we'll talk about it.
We're going to launch ChatGPT Atlas, our new web browser. We think that AI represents like a rare once-a-decade opportunity to rethink what a browser can be about and how to use one and how to sort of most productively and pleasantly use the web.
And then there's 3 special core features of Atlas that Ryan's going to walk you through in a bit. The first is chat comes with you anywhere as you go on the web. The second big feature is browser memory. The third, which we're really excited about, and Justin's going to show this later, is agent, which is in Atlas, ChatGPT now can take actions for you. It can do things.
All right, so my first reaction is, okay, great, but Google's going to come in and do at least this and, take back any market share they lose. I don't know. Do you agree with that? Alex, what are your thoughts?
I think there's a misconception that Atlas is a product. I don't think we should think of it as a product. I think we should think of it as a distribution channel for OpenAI's superintelligence. I think all of these products, these discrete products, are just going to dissolve over the next few years into a uniform medium of distribution for superintelligence. So whether it's one browser on the desktop versus another browser competing, I almost think it's the wrong question. I think the right question is what form of backend superintelligence is being surfaced via which channels. Browser is one, intelligent code editor environments are another. I think robots and various wearable devices are going to be another over the next few years. And I think it's really the superintelligence at the end of the day that's the differentiation, less the particular Chrome, if you will, that's just an embodiment of it to deliver it to the user. And I think along those lines, the most interesting for me part of the Atlas launch was the agent mode, less so the other features. Having a local agent mode, I think is potentially transformative for a number of use cases and feels a little bit more sophisticated than prior agent launches that we've seen from OpenAI. If you remember Operator, or if you remember the cloud-based ChatGPT agent, this one is at least partially local.
So you've got the big guys with infinite budgets. So you've got Google, you've got Zuck, and you've got Elon. But then you've got the 2 little startup, super hyper creative startup guys. So that's Dario and Sam. And so, Sam, OpenAI, is playing a very different game from Dario. Dario is relying on exactly what you just said. I'm going to build a more intelligent fundamental machine, and because it's more intelligent, people will navigate to it, and we'll go out through corporate channels. Then Sam is playing the old Bill Gates game where, I'm not going to take for granted that my AI is better than Google's. But right now I have twice as big an installed base as Google does. So what can I add to protect my position that makes me the default choice in the case where the 2 AIs are on rough parity? So he gets Johnny Ive to build a device. He's building his own data centers with Broadcom, and now he's adding a browser. And so he'll add everything that Bill Gates would have added that's a user point of control or an entry point into the use of AI in order to defend that turf and encourage more of the innovation to come through him rather than work around him through Google. But it's like all-out warfare all of a sudden between Google and OpenAI, and it's just really fun to watch.
Dave and Alex, my favorite model for this is still Jarvis from Iron Man, right? We're going to have an AI that is our personal compatriot and in our portal into everything. And I'm not going to care what browser I use. I'm just going to be able to have a conversation with my AI, and it will pull up the data from wherever it is, whether it's using superintelligence from OpenAI or Google.
Well, the only thing I'd add to that is that very, very soon that data will be your personal health data, your personal preferences, your everything about your soul. And then when you have your virtual girlfriend or boyfriend, everything you like and don't like in life will be in there. So if Sam wins the data aggregation race, if he falls behind for a month or a year in the AI race, he still has your data. And that personalization might create a much more compelling experience, allow them to catch up again. So the personal data warfare is like kicking off in a huge way right now. You mentioned it a second ago, Peter.
What's the downside of what we see here with Atlas? I mean, we have the ability of OpenAI to not only look at the data you have on your browser, but probably every tab that you have open and everything you have going on in your computer. And they're not promising to keep it confidential. Thoughts on that, Alex?
I think we'll see forcing functions for greater forms of confidentiality and privacy. But I'm just reminded, do you remember the browser wars?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Right.
And Google won with 70% market share today.
Yeah.
Right. So there's sort of a long history of sleepy periods of relatively low innovation separated by Cambrian explosions of functionality. I remember all of the browser wars, and I think a browser war today over competing among other factors on whose browser is most private while also being AI agentic, I think that's a valid front for competition, and I welcome the competition.
Amazing. Alex, would you introduce this next slide here? You built a chess game, but before I play it, explain what you built here.
Yeah, so with computer use assistants, CUAs, of which arguably this new ChatGPT Atlas agent mode is one example. I have my own evals. One of my favorite evals for testing these CUAs is to see whether they can win at simple and or complicated single player web games. So favorite easy example is to see whether I turn Atlas loose on a single player, not double player, a single player game of web chess and see whether it can win. I've used this eval against historically Operator from OpenAI, and what we're seeing here is a time lapse of it just being asked. I turned it loose on a web chess single player, asked it to win. And interestingly, this is the best performance I've seen to date from a web-based CUA turned loose on chess. Sometimes I'll turn it loose on a game of Web Civilization, if folks are familiar with the Civilization franchise. Mm-hmm. But in this case, intriguingly, it asked for hints, which I've never seen before. So it used the helpline built into the web game to ask for hints, and was winning at the end of the day. I think this is a preview in short.
Did it ask you for hints, or did it ask some other LLM
It asked
for hints?
the website for hints. Once it discovered, which it did pretty quickly, that it could ask for hints, it asked for hints and used that to win the game. And I think this is a preview of CUAs for everything, not just winning easy games of chess.
Amazing. Amazing. All right, I'm going to jump into Anthropic, and this is a conversation between Jonah Kuhl, who's the head of Life Science Partnership and Development, and Eric Kauderer Abrams, who's the head of Biology and Life Sciences Research. You know, in January at the World Economic Forum, we heard Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, talk about one of his passions, which is the ability of AI to accelerate biology and longevity. And very famously, he said, you know, if we're able to hit the targets we have for AI, we could see the doubling of the human lifespan in the next 5 to 10 years, which perked everybody's ears up, including mine. You know, are we going to see longevity escape velocity within this decade? Increasingly, the answer is yes. Let's take a listen to Jonah and Eric have this conversation.
I'll start with why are we focused on the life sciences? When we talk about the beneficial use cases of AI and all the amazing things that we can do in the world with the frontier AI that we're developing, actually the number one place that we at Anthropic are excited about applying it is within biology and the life sciences, right? If you read our foundational material, that's the primary area where we're really focused on delivering the beneficial impact. We need Claude to be conversant with all of the tools that scientists are using every day, right? And so there's a whole ecosystem of important tools and partners out there that we are integrating with, right? So we talk about Benchling on the, experiment administration, lab notebook side of things, 10x Genomics with Cell Ranger, right? An incredibly important platform for analyzing single cell experiments, and then PubMed, for example, for being able to query the literature, right? And so these are just three incredibly important partners in a much larger ecosystem. And so that base level is we need to make sure that Claude can talk to all the major sources that scientists are using throughout their daily. We want to bring Claude to performing at the level of a superhuman research assistant that can assist you as a scientist throughout all stages of your project.
Alex.
I speak from time to time on this pod about superintelligence solving math, science, engineering, medicine. I think this is likely how biology gets solved. I think I was talking a moment ago about computer use assistants, CUAs. I think we're entering the era of CUAs for biology, where we have baby superintelligences that are completely fluent and well-versed in the tools of computational biology and are able to read PubMed fluently and then go and perform experiments even. I think this is what solving biology with AI looks like.
Yeah. There's a company I just recently invested in that I'm very excited about. It's called Lila, Lila. People can look it up. It's out of MIT and Harvard. George Church is the chief scientist. Jeffrey Van Malten is the CEO. And what they're doing in a similar fashion, but I think more advanced, is they've set up these science data factories, right? So they have a superintelligence model they're building. And these science data factories are basically 24/7 lights out robotic farms looking for information out of nature. So if you imagine the superintelligence will come up with a scientific theorem or a proposed research, they'll program the robots to go do the research at night, gather the data, bring it back, check their theory, iterate, put the next experiment forward, and running on this 24/7 cycle to sort of mine data out of science itself, and focusing on biology first and foremost, but chemistry and material sciences. And I love this as we're searching for new data out there in the world to help us understand what's going on in our 40 billion cells. It's 5 to 10 billion chemical reactions per second per cell. We need to be able to reach in and get the data out to build our models even better.
I think that I think, Peter, you might know, Jeff was a lab mate of mine when we were undergrads at MIT. And I'm a huge evangelist for dark labs. I would like to see dark labs for everything.
Yeah.
Well, and Jeffrey Van Malten, cool. I know it's a harder name to find on the internet than Jonah Cool, but definitely look him up. The guy is going to be huge. You can see it coming, and Alex will reaffirm this, but he will be one of the key figures cracking life sciences. And I'll tell you what else. We'll see later in the pod. There's some people saying, look, we got to slow down AI. We got to stop. It's not going to actually happen. We're going to move full throttle, and there are two reasons. One is China. The other one is this. People are not going to sit and let people die unnecessarily from illnesses if AI can discover solutions to that. That's not going to happen.
Brilliant,
and so
Dave.
That's why the AI labs are talking about this use case so much, because it's life. It's preserving lives.
Yeah. And by the way, Jeffrey Van Malten and Lila will be at the Abundance Summit. Super excited for them to present. Our theme in March of 26 at the summit is superintelligence and the rise of humanoid robots. So he said, okay, that's definitely a subject I want to cover. All right, let's move on. Wikipedia says human traffic has been dropping, down 8% year on year. Less humans are coming to Wikipedia. We can dive into this. I'm still waiting for Grokpedia to come online. Alex, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I get asked the question a lot. How do we incentivize humans to create new knowledge in an era of generative AI? And I suspect the question itself is probably faulty. I think knowledge gathering is likely itself to transition to AI. I think we'll see investigative reporting that's AI based. So I'm not losing sleep over human traffic dropping in an era when knowledge synthesis is abundant, but knowledge generation by AI is not yet abundant. I think AI generated knowledge is right around the corner.
I have okay, Dave, I'm going to go ahead and then I have a rant on this.
All right. Well, this is right in my wheelhouse. So I need to wax poetic for a minute on this topic. So I've been the founder of 20 direct-to-consumer AI companies. First and foremost, every time someone complains about their traffic going down, it's going somewhere else. It's not going away. Overall traffic is going up very, very quickly. And so, I'm involved in a company I can't name right now that's gone from nothing to 600 million of revenue purely from online arrivals, 100 million of profit on the bottom line. And so when Wikipedia says, hey, traffic is going down, it's going to some other place. And the formula for getting the traffic is well known now. First and foremost, you need to create huge amounts of AI generated content, but it has to be good content. But you also have to pay the man. You got to pay Google, you got to pay Facebook. And if you do that concurrently with putting your content out there, then they'll give you the traffic. Also, you need to reformat your content so it's easily readable and interpretable by the AI, hence GEO at the bottom of this slide, generative engine optimization. Because in the future, people do not go to Wikipedia for their content. They just ask the AI. The AI's got all the information, but it still needs to be factually accurate and correct. And so that role, and I'm a big Wikipedia fan, but I was at the Washington Post when it was getting obliterated by the internet. And it felt like, hey, we're important for the country. We're factual. It doesn't matter. You're going away. And so that's what's happening.
All right, my rant on this. I've been trying to update my Wikipedia page for literally 2 years. I hired consultants to update my Wikipedia page, and every time it's updated, they bring it back to what it was. It's like so stuck 20 years ago. And I don't know. I used to use Wikipedia. I don't anymore. And the ability for an AI to actually search the web and get consistent and relevant and accurate information about me. So I think maybe Grokpedia will be a solution here, or in fact, any AI that just says, spin up a page on Dave Blundin, I can send somebody. That's going to be awesome.
I'll give you one other, pro tip.
Yeah.
Get a similar web account, similarweb.com. Get a similar web account, and you can see exactly where that user went. The guy that would have gone to Wikipedia yesterday, where did he go instead today? And so then, if you track where it's all moving, replicate that behavior, and you'll succeed.
Amazing. All right. Next article here is GPT-5 rediscovers long forgotten math connections. This has Alex Wissner-Gross written all over it. Dr. Gross, please tell us.
Peter, I talk frequently about how superintelligence is and will be solving math, science, engineering, medicine, other fields. And there was a lot of hand-wringing over the past week plus about a specific set of math problems and whether AI in general and GPT-5 specifically was actually uncovering new math. And I think that this story sort of beautifully encapsulates the fog of war we're in right now. The water level of intelligence is rising day by day, and some of the earliest math problems, open math problems, to be solved are, I think, will be math problems where the solutions were known to a subset of humanity, but not to all of humanity. And we're going to wring our hands collectively as a civilization quite a bit over, well, was this open problem in math really open, or was it solved, or was it half open where some people knew how to solve it and other people didn't know that it had even been solved? That's the fog of war phase that we're in. So there was a lot of discussion over the past week, like, was this a real accomplishment, a real discovery in math by AI? One of the Erdos problems, number 1043, for example. But there was, I think, ultimately a lot of really revealing discussion and commentary on this particular problem, and also other Erdos problems, that actually this is just a phase right now, like early days where we're still cleaning up house, as it were, in terms of understanding even which problems are open, closed, or somewhere in between. And after this phase, I predict we'll get to a phase where a lot of the uncertainty is reduced regarding whether a given problem is actually open or not.
Yeah, and
When
I
you
think
say
there's
open, you
also
mean solved, right? You mean solved by open.
Open means unsolved, closed means
Yes.
solved.
yeah.
Right.
I think there's also a great little case study in how the academia world is like, well, this proves that it didn't really solve it. It looked up an ancient, like, when you're trying to do something, you don't care a whit how it solved it. It came back with the right answer. This is a lot like, ThinkStruct in our lab. It's a company that does academic research and now patent research using AI. So Nikki Abate and Julius Heidcutter. And it is actually turning out to be a really good hybrid of writing your patent application while doing all the background research for all prior applications and all prior knowledge. And so those two things are integrated. And this is where you're seeing AI being superhuman. Because normally you'd say, oh, well, research of old documents is this guy, but thinking of new things is this other guy. The AI doesn't care. It just does both.
I'm so excited about the use of AI in writing up and submitting patents. And talk about something that is extraordinary. But one of my favorite applications of AIs and patents were the following. This was a conversation with an Abundance member who was like, I want to figure out how to use these technologies on my business. And I said, well, why don't you just ask? And so what I showed her, said, okay, here are 3 patents you're interested in. Put them in the browser and say, this is my business. How would I combine these 3 patents together to make a new product or service in my business? And oh my God, it's extraordinary, right? This is literally a creative engine. All right.
Well, anyone who's a real fan of this podcast by now has to have read Accelerando, because Alex Wissner-Gross says it's the best piece of writing in the history of humanity. If you heard that and then didn't read it, something's wrong with you. But the very first chapter, the opening scene, is exactly what we're talking about right now. The lead character makes a living with AI-generated patent filing.
Yes, consistently, and then giving it away. Anyway, let's not go there. All right, our next article here is Uber tests micro work for drivers to train AI. So Uber is paying between 50 cents to $1 per task that can take 2 to 3 minutes and get processed within 24 hours. So is this sort of a digital task rabbit? What is this, Dave?
This is really, really cool, because Mercor is almost closing in on $1 billion of revenue, going all over the world, grabbing expertise and getting it into a format where the AI can assimilate it, and then the AI can be an expert in that topic too. Well, you got all these Uber drivers driving around. They're sitting around a lot of the time. Do they have knowledge that may be a contributor back into the great AI machine? Because a lot of what's missing is physical motion, common sense, just all this information. So, why not use that same platform you've already got to be another Mercor type AI data gathering machine?
Alex, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think this points directionally to the future of the gig economy. The gig economy historically was focused on the physical world, physical tasks, inclusive of driving other people to their locations or driving food to a person's location. I think this points toward a near future where training robots to perform service economy tasks is the new de facto gig economy.
Yeah, so fascinating that Uber turned this way. It's all about the relationships it has, right? It has a relationship with a large number of people that it knows wants to earn money on the margin. And we'll probably see other companies follow suit as well.
Well, during COVID, Lyft got annihilated and Uber did fine because they had launched Uber Eats. So they're very, very thoughtful about this. And in fact, when I don't know if you remember Travis Kalanick when Uber was going public, but he got on stage and he said, Uber is not a ride-sharing, hailing cab company. We're an internet fabric. It was some like really ethereal, but now they're actually doing it. It makes sense in hindsight. So they don't view their platform as being about cars and rides. They view it about like Dave, we're going
to spend time with Dara, the CEO of Uber. He's going to be on stage with us at the Abundance Summit. Awesome. I had a long-standing relationship with Dara. We'll talk about what he's doing on the data side, but also, they're now partnered with Waymo. You can, in certain places, hire a Waymo through Uber, and they're hooking up, I think, with Joby on the flying cars. Let's call it that for the moment. So Uber's been an incredible platform for experimentation and sort of integration of various exponential technologies. So that'll be fun.
Okay,
all right,
can't wait.
Alex, I'm going to turn to you on this one. DeepSeek is packing text into images. Talk about this, pal. This is a significant transformation, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a major advance from DeepSeek. So a new model that DeepSeek announced, DeepSeek OCR. So maybe a bit of background first. Foundation models, frontier models like GPT, aren't thought to perceive text in the way that humans perceive text. Humans look at text on a page and we see text visually. the frontier models, the foundation models, most of them are believed to still consume text in the form of chunks of letters called tokens. And they don't have any, based on publicly available information, any visual perception of letters on a page. So they don't visually see the shape of a character or formatting or desktop publishing type layout on a page. They perceive none of that. They perceive at best maybe like HTML formatting instructions. So I think DeepSeek OCR, which is, again, if you squint at the model architecture, it's sort of an autoencoder that does optical character recognition after a fashion, but in a really interesting way. It consumes raw images of entire pages and encodes those as image tokens, not as text tokens, and then tries to decode those image tokens into text tokens. So a few things fall out of this. One, optical character recognition at high accuracy rates, which is pretty incredible. But secondly, this is able to perceive formatting the way humans do. And I think the practical upshot of this would be better grounding. Like, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have desktop publishing type formatting of outputs from frontier models with beautiful layouts? I would expect that to fall out for free, or better understanding of mathematical equations that are dependent on the way the equations are written and how they appear visually. I think better understanding of fonts. All of these I expect eventually to fall out of this line of research.
Interesting. And we're going to be seeing an article later about Amazon getting into the AR glass marketplace. And we're going to see from Meta and Google and probably OpenAI, and all of them were transforming, from a phone as the medium of interface to glasses at this medium interface. So I'm assuming that this kind of technology is going to help your glass effectively translate everything you're seeing into something that can be understood, read, and responded to.
I think that's table stakes. So yes to that, but also having AI that understands at a visual level all the text. I think that is going to be quite transformative.
Dave, you want to comment on this?
Well, I'm still blown away that if I'm writing code in Cursor or Windsurf and I take a screenshot and say, hey, there's a bug in here somewhere, it's an image, it's not text, and I just slap that right back into Cursor, it has no problem with it at all. Now, I know under the covers it's not doing this, it's actually converting it to text and then moving forward from there. So this will put the AI engine much more in tune with human thinking, because you're using the same exact pixel by pixel interface that we use with our eyeballs for everything, whether it's text or images or whatever. So it'll be a big advantage in multimodal. But what works already is just mind-blowing to me.
Do you expect, Alex, that we're going to see this type of OCR come into all the models next?
Yeah, I think we're moving towards a near future with universal tokens, tokens that span modalities. And I've long thought, wouldn't it be wonderful aspirationally if we had just a single modality that everything else flowed through? So rather than having a text modality and images and audio and video, if we just had maybe like a single universal, maybe video style modality that everything else flowed through, it might have certain benefits.
You know what's really interesting about that, Alex, is that's happening, and it puts the models much more in touch with humans. And at the same time, it's going the other direction in very specific domains, like magnetic bottles and quantum computing, where the knowledge is so far out of the human domain that you want completely different data representations at the front end of the funnel. And so these first models are going to use the second models as tools. It's really cool to watch the two kind of spread apart and think about how they're going to end up interacting.
This episode is brought to you by Blitzy, autonomous software development with infinite code context. Blitzy uses thousands of specialized AI agents that think for hours to understand enterprise-scale code bases with millions of lines of code. Engineers start every development sprint with the Blitzy platform, bringing in their development requirements. The Blitzy platform provides a plan, then generates and precompiles code for each task. Blitzy delivers 80% or more of the development work autonomously, while providing a guide for the final 20% of human development work required to complete the sprint. Enterprises are achieving a 5x engineering velocity increase when incorporating Blitzy as their pre-IDE development tool, pairing it with their coding copilot of choice to bring an AI-native SDLC into their org. Ready to 5x your engineering velocity? Visit Blitzy.com to schedule a demo and start building with Blitzy today.
All right, let's jump into our next article here. This is OpenAI hires bankers to automate junior work. So OpenAI has hired over 100 bankers, paying them $150 an hour to train AIs on M&A, LBOs, IPOs. Effectively, these bankers are in one sort of the way traders, helping to eliminate jobs of fellow bankers. So I don't know. My first take on this is OpenAI is basically eliminating what I would have imagined an entrepreneurial startup would do. I imagine lots of startups are looking to do this, and this is sort of a shot over the bow. Well, is OpenAI going to do this for every field? Get rid of white collar work across the board.
Well,
Any
the answer to
thoughts?
that is absolute yes. They are going to do this for every field, and they're going to do it quickly. And I just had this conversation with two of our companies. Make sure that you're the guy that Sam calls. And they're like, well, Sam's not gonna call me. Like, why would Sam call me? They said, okay, eliminate everybody else. He's not gonna call State Street Bank. He's not gonna call, he doesn't want to talk to big legacy bloated entities. All right. And he's also not likely to call two 22-year-olds out of Y Combinator who haven't even gotten to market yet. So if you're somewhere between those two things, you're just need to position yourself like Brendan Foodie did at Mercor, get into the building and be the person that solves that problem for OpenAI. But yes, is the answer. He'll do this in absolutely every category of human endeavor.
So I would imagine this kind of a vertical would be something that an entrepreneur would say, okay, we're going to go and do this ourselves for whatever field. But again, we talked about this when we were up with Kevin Weil, that is OpenAI going to be moving into and eliminating all the entrepreneurial vertical channels? I find this fascinating.
Yeah,
I think
go ahead, Mel.
I think the sort of the superficial story is that this is what the end of so-called white collar work looks like. Vertical by vertical, labor category by labor category, each existing form of the service economy, each manifestation of it gets digested and turned into AI automation. But I think that creates enormous entrepreneurial opportunities for everyone. There are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of labor categories with domain-specific knowledge that will require automation. Same with industry subverticals. And every platform company always instills maybe a modicum of fear in other companies. Oh, well, the platform will just absorb what I'm doing and we'll lose our footing. But I don't think that's an accurate representation of the real economy, where there is just tens of trillions of dollars of service economy labor that can be automated. And I do not expect a singleton scenario where any one company or any one platform or any one model just consumes the entire economy. We'll have, I think, a completely heterogeneous economy indefinitely into the future.
So bottom line here is that this effort by OpenAI could eliminate between a quarter and half of the junior headcount across Wall Street within 2 years. All right, moving on. I love this article. So Google is prepping Genie 3 for public experiments. So Genie 3 is going to let users create interactive worlds with text prompts. We talked about this. Extraordinarily powerful. This is persistent and consistent worlds that are generated from a text prompt that are photorealistic, that you can get into and you can use for a variety of different areas. Alex, do you want to jump in?
Well, first of all, you have to admire that the user interface, which we're now seeing previews of, looks identical almost to the grid of the holodeck in Star Trek.
Yes, I love that.
Have to admire that we're catching up with the future. It's very exciting. A level deeper, though, I do think world models, so-called right now, are going to merge with the foundation models. I think this is very likely to be an instrumental element of general purpose, generalist foundation models and frontier models, that you'll not just be able to have text-based conversations with them or audio-based conversations. They'll create entire worlds that you'll be able to walk around. On the one hand, that's the consumer use case. And the enterprise use case is these world models that are fully interactive will enable us to create new inventions, create new products, This is the mode through which AI understands and will understand the physical world and be able to create economically transformative inventions.
It's the democratization of interactive content creation, right? At a level of reality and resolution that is shocking. Just to hit on some of the ideas, right? For the individual, if you're thinking about this, how would I use it? You can build personalized gaming. It's creative storytelling. It's customized education. For companies, I think a lot of companies that could be using this for game development, for education tech. I personally think the most extraordinary way to educate and learn about something is to dive into that world. I've used this example so many times. If you want to learn Greek history, you can read a very dry textbook. You can even watch a movie, but imagine being able to drop into ancient Greece. You see a guy in a toga on a chunk of marble, and you walk over and he says, "Hey, I'm Socrates. Let's go for a walk. Let me show you around, meet my friends." That kind of immersive experience is the future of education, without, for me, any question at all. Dave?
Well, just not to disappoint everybody, but this is going to be another one of those things that everybody instantly loves. Just like deep research, if you've tried using Gemini Deep Research lately, you'll sit there for like 10, 15 minutes unnecessarily, and then it'll give you something great back, but it's just enough to frustrate the hell out of you. It's entirely...
More GPUs.
More GPUs, man. Keep tiling, because people are going to love it. It's incredible, and unless you buy your own NVIDIA box, you're not going to be able to get the speed you want.
All right, our next article here is Meta borrows $27 billion to build an AI data center. So Meta SPV is borrowing this money at 6.8% to fund a multi-gigawatt Louisiana data center. Dave, you had some thoughts on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mark Zuckerberg has taken every penny of cash flow from one of the biggest tech companies on the planet, from Meta, Facebook, and pumped it all into this AI initiative. And now is borrowing, going to the next level, and the stock market loves it. So what does that tell you as a CEO? Like if you're a true AI company on a true AI mission, you can invest like crazy from your public capital or from your venture capitalists, and they love it because they see the future is here. But I don't think it's probably unprecedented in history for a company that used to be an absolute bottom line cash cow producing huge amounts of EBIT to take every penny of it and then borrow even more to pump it into an initiative.
I mean, Mark has said over and over again, he will do whatever he needs to get to digital superintelligence first. Mm-hmm. It's like his war cry. Alex?
I think it's also worth adding the credit markets are just as interested in financing this project, call it tiling the earth with compute, as the equity markets. And the fixed income /credit/debt markets are enormous. And I think we're starting to see this financial model where the lower half of the AI infra stack is being funded by credit, as we're seeing here. And then the upper half, where the models and the applications live, is being funded by equity. So we're seeing sort of a whole of economy financing model emerge for this full AI infra stack.
It's, the implications of this, though, is capital from public equities, from sovereigns, from debt, all flowing into AI at the exclusion of so many other technology areas.
Well, one of our best partners, Kush Bavaria, phenomenal guy, just co-founded a company called Orn, ORNN. Check it out. But my point in this is that people that are kind of technical and engineering wouldn't normally get into the finance side of things, but kind of like Chase Lockmiller, they're getting drawn into this in a big way. And it's a very, very good strategic move. If you have any interest in finance whatsoever, and you understand GPUs, chips, data centers, or just math, it's a great direction to go. It's just a huge amount of capital, redirecting into this direction and making it move intelligently, the right investments, the right locations. That's not a trivial problem at all. So if you have an engineering mindset and you're interested in this area, you can really do well.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, on the data center world, here's the news from Oracle. Oracle is planning a 16 zettaflop AI supercomputer. We don't talk about zettaflops all that often. So it's announced a next-gen cloud computer design scaling to 800,000 GPUs. A zeta flop here, a zeta flop there.
All right. I'm going to feed Alex on this one. I can't wait to hear what he has to say. But remember on that podcast a couple months ago, we were talking about the 10E26 models. So the E26, that's the regulatory definition of a AGI superintelligent, register it with the government type thing. So that's 1E26. A zetaflop is what, 1E21. So that's per second, though. That's that's that many flops per second.
So we're talking about an exponent of. Yes, good.
Yeah. So to get from 10 to the 16th to 10 to the 21, you need 5 more ohms. So that's 100,000. So every 100,000
seconds. For those ohms are orders of magnitude, just to translate.
5 more ohms, 5 more. So 100,000x. So every 100,000 seconds, a 1 zetaflop computer can create a foundation frontier level AI model every 100,000 seconds. So 100,000 seconds is 1.1 days, as it turns out. So every day you get a new foundation. And that's at 1 zetaflop. This is 16 zetaflops. So 16 times a day, you build a foundation frontier level model. Does that sound right, Alex? Did I get any of that wrong? I'm doing.
I need to double check, but it sounds approximately right. I would add, so Oracle is, this is all in the public reporting, Oracle is both financing and operating Stargate Abilene. And Stargate Abilene is, I think, together with this 16 zetaflop supercluster, it is emblematic of a new form factor for computing. The personal computer was a major new form factor. The smartphone was arguably a major new form factor. These superclusters with approximately 1 million GPUs and tens of zetaflops, this is a fundamentally new form factor for computing with high-speed interconnect, which we're not talking about, but which is arguably just as important as the raw compute power being a key architectural innovation. And it's not going to stop with Stargate Abilene. This form factor, again, in the spirit of tiling the Earth with compute, we are, unless something radical changes, we are going to tile the Earth and maybe near-Earth solar system with this type of new form factor of computer.
Incredible. All right, continuing on this conversation, Anthropic to expand to 1 million TPUs on Google Cloud. So their goal is to bring this compute online by 2026. I think there's a very loving relationship between Google and Anthropic. Anthropic's sort of the little brother there, and they're growing closer and closer. Alex, what do you make of this?
Well, I want to say something a little bit glib, perhaps, which is that when you have super intelligence that's incredibly thirsty for compute, it makes for some interesting combinations in the market. I think the thirst for compute is creating enormous pressure on the frontier labs to diversify their infra stack. So we're seeing NVIDIA GPUs up against Google TPUs, up against Amazon Trainiums, up against ASICs, including Frontier Lab specific ASICs. I think these are all in the mix. So for those who are worried about some sort of architectural monopoly or singleton where only one GPU or accelerated compute architecture completely dominates the market, I think this is a healthful dose of both diversity and reality that no, actually we're seeing heterogeneous architectural combinations at multiple levels of the stack. The future light cone of compute architectures is not going to be dominated by any single company.
Alex, for those who don't know the difference between TPUs and GPUs, would you give us a 101 here?
GPUs, this is branding that was popularized by NVIDIA, so graphics processing unit. This was originally conceived and went to market for accelerating video games, where NVIDIA was arguably the chief actor for accelerating compute specifically for video game purposes and professional graphics as well. And then eventually it found its way to Bitcoin and other crypto minings. And then fortunately, the need and the thirst for accelerated compute for AI arrived just in time to sort of recover from a bit of a mini crypto winter and step in. Meanwhile, TPUs, tensor processing units, this is a term from Google, but the underlying architecture is pretty similar to the way GPUs from NVIDIA and other firms handle AI operations. The tensor is a reference to this idea that the central operation that they need to perform in support of AI and machine learning is taking large matrices, which, if generalized, become tensors, sort of high-dimensional matrices of numbers, and multiplying and adding them. So that's sort of to oversimplify, that is the core operation of accelerated compute for machine learning, just taking matrices of numbers and multiplying them.
That's a great
All
primer.
right. Appreciate that. We talked about this on the podcast we recorded at Visioneering a few days ago. Hopefully you enjoyed that episode. But I wanted to bring Alex and Dave into the conversation here. This is StarCloud bringing data centers to space. I'm going to play a short video from Philip Johnston. Actually, Philip, who's the co-founder and CEO of StarCloud, was here with me for the last few days, so it was fun to see his points of view. Let's play the video and we'll talk about it afterwards.
The reason we're building data centers in space is mainly for the energy that we can draw from solar energy in space. So there's almost unlimited access to abundant solar energy in space. The problem on Earth is we're very quickly running out of space and actually energy on Earth to build large data centers. In space, we can have these enormous solar panels, which can power these data centers. And then another advantage is we can then run large radiators to dissipate that heat in infrared out into the vacuum of space.
So it's interesting. Philip Johnston was on stage pitching a prize called, the Space Cool XPRIZE. It was something like that. And basically, one of the challenges they still have is radiative cooling. Space is very cold, but there's very little, atoms to carry the heat away. So you're focused on infrared radiative cooling, which is a challenge. So I'm so curious, Alex, what do you make of this? Is this the future, or is this something that isn't going to happen?
Well, I think at the heart of this is what I would argue is one of the most important civilizational questions that we face. We don't know the answer, but the question is, does a mature, intelligent civilization build a Dyson swarm or not? Dyson swarm meaning taking apart the planets in our solar system to build lots of computers that orbit the sun. I don't know the answer. I suspect the answer will depend on physics discoveries that haven't happened yet. And just jumping out a few decades, playing this tape forward, as it were, playing the recording forward, I think if humanity ends up being permanently latency constrained, we're probably going to do it. This probably then is the beginning of the construction of a Dyson swarm. On the other hand, if physics make it ergonomic to easily travel to other star systems, presumably with physics that we're not aware of yet, then I could imagine scenarios where actually building a Dyson swarm, turning StarCloud and other orbital computing platforms into a full-on Dyson swarm probably doesn't make that much sense. One could also imagine other contingencies, maybe the demand as unconscionable as it is right now, that demand for accelerated compute might peak at some point in the future. If that ever happens, I could also imagine we don't build the Dyson swarm. Otherwise, I think just straight shot, this is the beginning of a long-term trend. Mark this point in time. We're at the beginning, unless something changes, of the construction of a Dyson swarm.
Yeah, just to clue folks in, Dyson swarm, the terminology comes from Dr. Freeman Dyson, who was at the Institute for Advanced Studies at Princeton, who basically said, as you become an advanced civilization, you're going to want to capture all of the energy coming out of your star. So you'll dismantle your solar system and you'll basically build a shell around the star that captures all of it. This is the earliest days. So, I just want to point out, and I had this conversation with Philip, we have 8,000 times more energy that hits the surface of the Earth today than we consume as a species. And the challenge is, can we build the square meterage of solar and dissipation arrays in space? There's going to be a lot of robotics required to do that. And when do we get there? Is it 10 years from now, 20 years from now? We're going to find out. Along these lines, we saw Crusoe, basically announce that they plan to support this by 2027. And I'm not exactly sure what they mean by supporting it. They're going to put an H100 up in space, and H100 in space represents 100 times more compute than any other satellite has had. But it's a single H100. It's not a cloud, not a Crusoe cloud. Alex, did you dig into this further?
Yeah, I would maybe also just comment on timescales. So putting a single H100 in low Earth orbit or LEO may not sound like that much now, but if you just, starting from physics, like if we have this notion that we know, or at least have a prediction, that the end state of all of this is taking apart our solar system, you could actually just do a few calculations to figure out the timescale for when that would happen. So one of my favorite statistics, if you ask, like, if we could completely encircle the sun with solar collectors, capture all of its luminosity, and channel all of that power to, say, unbinding Jupiter, we're basically disassembling Jupiter. Jupiter's created its own gravity well, so the term of art would be unbinding it from its own gravity. It would only take approximately 2 centuries if we captured all the light from the sun to disassemble or unbind Jupiter. So I view one H100 going into space in the next couple of years. This is the first step in potentially a 2-century journey to deploy compute at scale in our solar system. And I think it's an important first
Exponential
step.
growth. Double something 30 times, you get a billion-fold increase. Dave, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, Peter, you said, the sunlight hitting the Earth every day is 8,000 times more energy than we consume. But have you ever done the math on the fraction of all the sun's energy that hits the Earth in the first place?
Oh, yeah, it's a far less. It's a fraction of 1%.
Yeah, no, I don't know how many decimal points are in there, but it's like there's a monster amount of energy in that Dyson sphere, Dyson swarm view. So yeah, it's 200 years, sure, why not? What's interesting in the short term, this could be a great idea or a terrible idea for Crusoe, and it depends entirely on the timeline diffusion, which we're about to talk about. So that's an interesting factor in all this.
It's worth pointing out, while the term star cloud sounds like it's got Musk behind it, Elon is not involved in this. He did retweet the star cloud announcement, but I love Elon. He's incredibly brilliant, but at the end of the day, if he were to take this on, he would probably do it on his own. That's my experience. All right, moving forward. Okay. Now on to Elon here. So Elon says the A15 chip, by some metrics, will be 40 times better than A14. We deleted the legacy GPU. It's basically a GPU. I poured so much life energy into this personally. It'll be a real winner. So, we've seen this before where Elon goes heads down and focuses on a very specific element, all the way down to the engineers, scientists, the production line. Alex, you've been tracking this. What does the A15 mean for Tesla, for Optimus, for XAI?
So I've spoken in the pod, on the pod in the past about this notion that superintelligence is not going to stay just bottled up in the data centers. It is, I've argued in past, it is literally going to walk out the doors of the data centers in humanoid robotic form, in driverless car form. I think what's most intriguing about the AI5 architecture is it's a unified architecture. This is a single accelerator that is planned for use both in the data center side and in the robotic/car side. Single chip, which is this is something new that the world hasn't seen before. A single unified architecture for both cloud data center compute and also embodied in robots and cars. And so I think that this is quite literally potentially the embodiment of intelligence walking out the door of the data center into our homes and into our lives.
Well, and this ties back to that last story too. All the big guys now have their own chips. Sam announced in our last podcast that he has his own Broadcom custom designs. So Anthropic is the one exception. And so they're going to adopt the Google TPUs that was in that other slide. But that's not a very comfortable place to be. If all the other competitors have their own chip designs and as they're modifying their algorithms, the AI is tweaking the chip design. So once you're in bed with Samsung or TSMC or Intel, and you have your whole supply chain going right into your own data centers, you can innovate, redesign the chip, and get it back into production very, very quickly. Google's already got that cycle time way down. So it leaves Anthropic in kind of this uncomfortable position where, well, we're buddying up with Google. Yeah, but you're on their TPUs. They're going to give you whatever they want to give you.
Fascinating. But all of this comes back to TSMC production capability, right? In Samsung, there are basically choke points.
Yeah, there's no doubt that any one of these companies would be buying TSMC, Intel, or Samsung tomorrow if the regulators would let it happen, because that's the choke point, and they all know it. So all these really, high-level partnerships and relationships are really, really forming, and it's a very competitive playing field. But yeah, everyone's going to have their own chips.
Week by week, we're seeing the shifting relationships and capital flow here. All right, this next article comes from Amazon and their new delivery glasses. Let's take a look at the video here and then talk about the implications for this. It's fascinating what this means for labor.
Well, check out these nerdy smart glasses. These are smart glasses developed by Amazon for their delivery drivers. So they're just in development now, but basically they use technology to like a head-up display, show you what you need to do. So in this case, instead of using your mobile phone as a driver to scan the parcels, you simply look at them and work out which parcel needs to go where. But then when you head out to deliver, it gives you actual information about the place you're delivering. It'll give you warning about dogs and things and shows you exactly where to leave it. And it's all done, even the photos are taken, and you never need to use the mobile phone. So cool technology, very much like Meta's Ray-Bans or maybe Apple Vision from Amazon.
Okay, so this is what I think is going on. This is put forward as we're going to help our drivers, and keep them away from, barking dogs and help them, do this with hands-free delivery. I think this is a mechanism by which Amazon uses the drivers to collect a lot of information to train their delivery robots. This is just like Tesla with its cameras training its full, self-driving models. Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And it shows you how the technologies interact too, because the glasses will be profitable instantaneously within their internal use case. They can perfect them, and then they can decide later. Remember there was a Kindle Fire phone. It didn't succeed, but they've tried before to compete with Apple and Anthropic or Android in the device warfare, game. So this is a great stepping stone for them to make money and perfect the device while gathering all the data, which will then feed their robotics initiative, but also the consumer glasses initiative, which will come later. So you're exactly right.
Yeah. Do you want to add anything, Alex?
I'll just add, I think this functionality can generalize well to non-delivery functions as well. I think this is the tip of the iceberg for using wearables to automate, and even before we get to automation, to capture telemetry and training data for the entire services economy. So I think that we're going to see this across many, many other verticals: healthcare, energy, hospitality. Expect smart glasses and wearables for building training data sets and post-training data sets across every possible.
Also construction.
And
Don't
memory
forget
augmentation.
construction. We're doing the biggest construction build out in the history of America, and certainly probably the world. And it's all, electricity and plumbing and buildings and everything. But because those are AI forward projects like, Chase Lockmiller at Crusoe and Project Stargate, they're going to be early adopters of exactly the same thing you're talking about for construction. So that'll be, and construction is a huge fraction of the global economy. So that'll be a really fun one.
And for me, the most important thing for me for a aging population is going to be memory augmentation, right? Using these glasses to remember, who you're talking to, the last conversation you had. I mean, personally, I can't wait. I meet so many people, and I love being able to, remember the details, but sometimes it's just a challenge. All right, we're going to go into a subject we covered on the last pod with Emad in particular and Eric Blier, but I cannot wait to hear the take that Alex, you have on this, and Dave, you have. This is Google's quantum breakthrough nears real-world use. So this is the Willow quantum chip. A friend in Santa Barbara, Hartmut Nevin, who heads the Google quantum team. Congratulations But at the end of the day, Alex, what does this mean?
Well, first, maybe a little bit of the background. So I read the core nature paper behind this announcement. Very interesting. This was the Google team.
By the way, Alex, I have to say, I really appreciate the fact that you dig in on
Me
every one of
too.
these podcasts to go and read the actual science.
Well, it's difficult to comment on it if I haven't read it, but thank you.
I understand that.
Well,
but,
everybody else on the
it's
planet
like,
is commenting on it without reading it. So you're the only one doing it, and I appreciate it.
I've seen these comments on YouTube that Alex is an AI. I've seen him glitch. You know, God knows.
We want to
maybe.
use this as our cold open.
I'm not gonna disclose any details, but maybe we'll see you in live. Anyway, dive in, please. You read the paper. What does it say?
Right. So I read the core nature paper behind this announcement. It's very interesting. The premise is that there's a certain physical quantity, and in the case of this announcement, it's called a second order out of time order correlation. This is basically a measure of quantum chaos. It measures how chaotic a given quantum system is. And the Google and collaborator team showed that it would be very challenging for a classical computer, which is to say a non-quantum computer, to be able to compute it. So I think it's very interesting. It's nice progress in terms of demonstrating quantum speedups or quantum advantages versus classical computers. What I'm still waiting for, though, if I got my wish, is a more, call it, economically transformative quantum algorithm. What I'm waiting for, what I'm hoping for, is that sometime in the next few years, we will achieve a definitive breakthrough speedup for quantum acceleration of AI. I think applications like this, where there are applications in quantum simulation, quantum chemistry, simulating materials, optimizing molecules, I think it's great. I don't think it is necessarily world-changing. And the world-changing use case for quantum acceleration, if the physics of our universe are so kind as to allow them, would be, I think, something like being able to achieve orders of magnitude speed up in training or inference for a frontier model. I think that would be utterly game-changing.
Amazing. The term quantum advantage was coined a few years ago as the point in which a quantum computer demonstrates the ability to do a real world thing better than any classical computer, right? With ones and zeros. And so people have been chasing this idea of a quantum advantage really to rationalize the massive investments and to actually get traction. Now we have a number of public quantum companies and, wanting to get revenues. I think one of the other important things to note here is the concept of error rates in quantum computers. And how do we get to logical qubits, and how do we reduce the error rate so we actually have something that's going to be useful? But let me ask you a different question here, Alex. How big is quantum computation as compared to AI? How big a relative is it? Larger? Many times larger? What are your thoughts?
I want to answer, I want to bisect the question into now/short term versus long term. At the moment and in the short term, the actual applications are relatively pedestrian, prosaic, not economically transformative. The best applications I think that I've seen anywhere close to being useful in the short term are for quantum simulation, leveraging the fact that it's relatively straightforward. As Richard Feynman, who arguably helped to create the entire field of quantum computing, pointed out, you can use one quantum system to simulate another quantum system relatively easily. But these aren't economically transformative, not in the same way as AI that is just turning our service economy, as we were discussing earlier, and just automating it. Quantum doesn't have that capability in the short term. In the long term, I would hope quantum will enable us to build much faster AI systems. So in the long term, holding out hope that quantum in the end, there's almost an angle, you'll forgive me for this, there's almost a redemption arc that I'm hoping for out of quantum information systems, because so many of the problems right now that AI is solving, grand challenges like protein folding. Do you remember 10, 20 years ago, there was a sizable community that thought protein folding would require quantum computers to solve. That did not happen. We were able to solve it with just AI on top of classical computing. So there's almost a who moved my cheese angle to the sense like the grand challenges that quantum was supposed to be the great white knight and solve for us keep getting devoured by AI instead. I'd love to see a bit of turnaround sometime in the next 10 years on that.
Fascinating. My favorite science fiction books all have digital superintelligent AIs, conscious AIs, doing so on the backs of quantum clusters. So
there would be certain advantages, like, yeah.
Go ahead.
So potential advantages like energy efficiency, if we could build a fully reversible AI supercomputer, that would probably be have some sort of quantum coherent foundation. That would be transformative. We wouldn't need to build all these SMRs and fission plants and nat gas co-location facilities if we had fully reversible quantum computer based foundation models everywhere. But we're not there yet.
Nice. Dave, let's go to the next article here, and I'd love your thoughts on it, which is that President Trump eyes equity into U.S. quantum firms. So, this is the potential beginning of a sovereign-style VC fund for the United States. He's targeted IonQ, Rigetti, D-Wave, Quantum Computing Inc., and Atom Computing. I mentioned on the last pod when we talked about this that I had taken D-Wave public through a SPAC, huge, 8,000x return from the earliest lowest point to where it is today. Dave, thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I love it, and I hate it as a precedent, but I still love it because Alex is always pointing out that what we're doing right now is unprecedented, except maybe during the build up to World War II. And you think about 1939, we're basically flying biplanes in the U.S. Air Force. By the end of 5 years later, we have jets. So just incredible amount of government investment. Yeah. So that's what's going on right now in AI, and it's great. It's what we need. So now that's moving into quantum too. And you've made the point many times, Peter, that our economy doesn't function well in these areas that require you to think more than 5 or 10 years in the future. China works really well thinking 10, 20, 30 years in the future, but we don't do that well. So the government kickstarting quantum is a great move if you believe in it 5, 10, 15 years in the future. But as a precedent for government involvement in the economy, it's terrible. It's because they're going to make terrible decisions in the long run. These are very good decisions in the short run, but that's because all this incredible talent has gone to Washington for the first time in my lifetime. But that's not sustainable. And so I hate it as a precedent.
We see the government investment triggering huge amounts of private investment that follow on, right? So after the Intel deal, Intel stock doubled between $20 a share before and $40 a share, a day or two ago. And we're seeing this again, a 10 to 15% increase in these quantum stocks after this story got leaked. Mm-hmm. I wonder where they're going to go next. When they go, I think the government's been going into rare earth metals. We've seen some of that conversation. Where else might they be making sort of strategic investments?
Well, I hope they take that, Alex's World War II analogy and stay focused on the things we need in this very specific race to AGI and ASI. Mm-hmm. So rare earths would fit for sure, and energy would fit for sure. Quantum may or may not.
I'm kind of shocked that the government hasn't made a move to get into the fusion companies or the SMR companies, really to help accelerate that. Because I think that one thing would bring a lot more capital. I mean, Commonwealth Fusion is probably the best funded. I was talking to some of the fusion companies here at Visioneering and talking about Helion. Interestingly, they said, Helion is so close-lipped, we have actually no idea what they're doing and how far they're along. There's public disclosures of some information. They're claiming 2028 Microsoft, but we don't actually know. And these were from the top fusion experts. Commonwealth Fusion, targeting 2030, but they still have a lot more development. Alex, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not going to second guess the Commerce Department or the executive, but there is some reporting that there may have been some money left over from the CHIPS Act, and quantum firms might be interested, certainly would be interested in either obtaining equity investments, or my guess is more likely loans or warrants or some other financial structure. But I think the question of how strategically important quantum is as a technology when you compare it with more obvious feedstocks like rare earths or energy or compute or fabs, I think that's to be decided. I don't know.
Well, I will say
All
I
right.
can't add anything to Alex's insights on this at all, but I will say I talked to Frank Wilczek about it. He's a Nobel Prize winner in physics, and famous, and spent his whole career in quantum physics. And he said almost exactly the same thing Alex said. So there's 2 data points.
All right, let's jump into energy. A few different articles here. This one's interesting. In particular, is a chart showing us the increasing price for U.S. construction of nuclear reactors versus China. And here's the quote: construction costs for nuclear reactors in the United States have risen roughly 1,000% since 1970s, while China's costs have steadily declined. That's not good news. Alex, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I think there's an alternative history where the US never basically stopped building nuclear plants in the late 1970s. And if you're familiar with all of the microeconomics around experience curves, unit costs tend to collapse the more you make of a given item. And as a country, the US basically stopped making nuclear power plants decades ago. And we're going to, I think, if we're going to feed the voracious energy appetite of these AI data centers, we need as a country to relearn how to build lots of next generation nuclear plants. And the good news is the demand signal is being sent by the AI data center companies. But I think there will be all of these knock-on benefits, not just for AI data centers, but for everyday life if we live again in a truly power-rich society.
Well, Alex,
The sad thing,
it's worse than that sounds too, because it's not just about unit cost. If you look at the actual construction of a nuclear facility in the U.S., it's mostly overhead, regulatory, political garbage, bullshit costs.
It's regulation, it's litigation, it's loss of manufacturing expertise, all of these things, and we've done it to ourselves. All right, next article here is fascinating. U.S. is offering nuclear energy companies access to weapons-grade plutonium. So this comes out of Energy Secretary Chris Wright. The U.S. Department of Energy will let private firms use 19 tons of plutonium from old warheads to fuel their next generation reactors. The move is boosting domestic nuclear supply, reducing reliance on Russian uranium. I find this as a fascinating move. I mean, talk about, sort of removing the shackles and giving entrepreneurs access to feedstock. Who wants to take it?
Well, everybody probably knows this, but the cost of the fuel in a nuclear reactor is tiny. It's a rounding error. And so everyone's been buying their fuel from Russia for a long time. Opening up the US supply doesn't really change anything. It's a rounding error in the overall costs anyway. But, if you're going to buy it from Russia anyway, what's the harm in using our surplus plutonium? So it's not changing the math one iota.
Alex, any different take on this?
I'd also comment maybe even more broadly on nuclear engineering as a vibrant discipline. There was maybe a bit of a hot take, but there was a period of time for a few decades when nuclear engineering, unless it was for, say, some biomedical application, was positively unfashionable to study. And I think that I don't want to call it a nuclear winter for obvious reasons, but there was I think that period of time, we're coming out of that now. And as a society, speaking particularly of the US, but the West in general is entering an era when we need to refamiliarize ourselves with the nuclear fuel cycle and get comfortable with nuclear fuel cycles in general. It's part of the future.
And particularly part of the future is fusion. And so the U.S. has put forward a new roadmap for fusion energy. The DOE roadmap touts commercial fusion by the mid-2030s, actual aim for public infrastructure in the 2030s to scale up. Interestingly, this has $0 of federal funding behind it and $9 billion of private investment. Alex, you found this particular timeline. Talk to us about it. What does it mean?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed reading the roadmap. I thought it was delightful in some respects. So the roadmap calls for 3 stages of advancement in fusion energy in the US. The first stage, call it the short term over the next 2 to 3 years, calls for early stage price demonstrations. So that takes us through 2027, 2028. The second stage, medium term, calls for early stage fusion pilot plants between 2028 and 2030. And the third, quote unquote, long term calls for actual operation at production of generation power plants between 2030 and 2035. So this is actually a very, I think some would say it's a very ambitious timeline, at least by historic standards, where fusion was always 30 to 50 years out. Now it's basically in our short term. And it also, I think, aligns with some of the public announcements that Helion on the one hand and Commonwealth Fusion, on the other hand, have made regarding actual test facilities being in operation between 2028 and 2030. So I think, in short, this roadmap is more a reflection, or at least I interpret it as more a reflection of some of the most ambitious private sector players and their actual plans.
Dave, we're going to be having dinner with Bob Mumgard on Wednesday night in Riyadh. We have our Abundance dinner that we're co-hosting with Amjad from Replit and Link Ventures. A lot of incredible people are going to be there. So I look forward to asking him more about this.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I mean, the head of Commonwealth Fusion, he's done extraordinary work, and excited to see where they're going to go. All right, continuing on the energy theme, Amazon bets big on next-gen nuclear. So this is the state of SMR, small modular reactors. This one is with X Energy. We've talked about X Energy before. Its initial 320 megawatt output that can scale to nearly a gigawatt, which can power data centers, obviously carbon-free. I love SMRs and I love the Gen 4 nuclear reactors. We unfortunately and we talked about this, we've shut down our ability to manufacture these. And so this has become an entrepreneurial effort. But one of the things that I find fascinating is while we have the designs, we have permissions, the timelines for getting these SMRs out, they're not like 26, 27, 28, they're 2030s. Which is concerning. Why can't we get these guys going faster? Right.
No, the timelines are really interesting to track, and it'll come up at FII next week in a big way. But a gigawatt, Eric Schmidt said we need 100 gigawatts by 2030, and that's just a fact. It can't go up or down because that's the number of GPUs we'll be making. They're going to go into production one way or another, and so you need to find 100 gigawatts. By 2030. That's only about a 10% expansion of the U.S. power supply. So it's not insurmountable. But then 2031, 2032, the new fabs will be online and the GPU production will go way up in 2031, 2032. And so then you need some massive, the 100 gigawatts is a stepping stone to something much bigger just a few years later. So if the fusion comes online in 2029, 2030, it's massively important. But if it's just 5 years late, we're like, where's that power going to come from? Then suddenly you're launching them into space. And so these completely different ideas, and the modular reactors here, they're fission. So that's the third option, plus renewable is a fourth. So all those things are racing against this 2030 clock.
I have to imagine by 2030, we're going to figure it out more energy efficient compute. 10x or 100x more efficient. And, Alex, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
The intelligence of the AI between here and there is going to be like,
yeah.
But also, I have to invoke Jevons paradox. We're going to have presumably much more demand for it as well, even though cost per compute or algorithmic advances are going to 5x to 10x every year, maybe optimistically, the amount of energy, the energy reduction that we need in any given year. So I don't know when or if there will be a turning point where we need less energy. I will point out, though, with the SMRs, I think it's striking. No cooling towers. This is a totally new form factor, decades of acculturation, people being trained to look for those iconic cylindrical cooling towers. no cooling towers. These can be put in so many more locations. They are compact. They can be put into novel sites that otherwise might never have been on the table for some of the first generation nuclear power sites. So even if there is a sequencing issue, and even if the first boatloads of SMRs start arriving circa 2030, I do think they're very likely to end up being an important part of the overall power mix for AI data centers and otherwise.
Yeah, and keep in mind,
Amazing.
the vast majority of the data centers don't need to be near population centers. And that's
Yeah.
a big difference. You know, those iconic cooling towers that Alex was mentioning, people hate them when they're on the beach in front of your house. But these SMRs can be, you know, Wyoming and Texas and Nevada in the middle of, you know, very unpopulated areas. And that's a great place to put some of these really large scale data centers. So this will happen for
They
sure.
look like normal buildings. That's what's most striking to me. You would never, at least with the eyes of 2025 today, look at the building that you're sharing and say, aha, that's obviously a fission site. It looks like a normal building.
Amazing. So, we're going to see a continued mix. I sure hope that the government does start backing solar and backing SMRs and backing fusion more. We need to accelerate our energy production beyond just natural gas and coal and other areas. I'm going to end this with what I'm going to call a weird science article. So let's let's end on something that doesn't normally enter our conversation in the exponential world. Alex, you found this one. It's called butt breathing, a real medical option. Do you want? Do you want to?
Sure, Peter. I'll take the hit for ending on a low note. But in all seriousness, this is a transformative breakthrough, or at least the beginnings of a transformative breakthrough for people suffering from severe respiratory failure who can't breathe through their lungs. And if folks have seen The Abyss, the science fiction movie, where there's a famous scene where a character is consuming the oxygenated, or I should say an oxygen substitute liquid, so breathing liquid basically, deep underwater, that they'll have some familiarity with novel forms of respiration and blood oxygenation. This was also the subject of last year's Ig Nobel Prize for discovering that non-human animals could oxygenate their blood supply by consuming oxygen via the other end, as it were.
So
only so many euphemisms I can use here. But
well, the intestines are a very blood-rich, large surface area part of your body. And so if you're able to put sort of a hyperoxygenated fluid enema, let's call it that, then you can perhaps oxygenate your blood supply and get enough of your red blood cells oxygenated to
really
get to your
taking this
brain.
seriously.
I mean, it's like it's.
But to elevate just a
I think
little
we've
bit,
just lost our entire audience on this particular article.
The only reason I like this story and I wanted it in the podcast is because every time Salim says something in the future, we have the option to say, "Oh, he's butt breathing."
Maybe just to try to elevate a little bit, there's been interest over the decades in nanorobots that would help with oxygenating the blood, so-called respirocytes. And to the extent that it's possible, and I should add also parenthetically, sci-fi scenarios like enabling humans to be able to hold their breath underwater for hours on end. So there's been like persistent sci-fi pressure to discover new ways to oxygenate the blood in environments that are, call them less than hospitable. So to the extent
you're really reinforcing the theory that you're an AI.
So all of this materializes on the backside of nanotechnology, and one of these times, I really want to dive into not wet nanotechnology where we're using DNA origami, but Drexlerian assemblers. That just opens up everything, and respirocytes are fantastic. Literally BCI enabled through nanobots in the brain. I can't wait. So, I'm going to get Ray Kurzweil on our podcast so we can have the conversations with him. Ray's been a dear friend and a mentor for so many years. at the end of the day, his prediction is nanobots by the early mid 2030s, so 2033, and that's going to unlock high bandwidth BCI, but unlocks basically longevity escape velocity, or I don't like using the term immortality because it sort of hits so many different negative buttons. But if you can repair on a cellular and subcellular level all parts of your body, that is an incredible future.
Well,
I
if
think
you can
we'll
get
get there.
Ray and Alex on the same podcast, that podcast could also be immortal. That would be something I would kill to see.
Well, we'll do that for sure. And again, to all of our friends listening, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of WTF. If you're not a subscriber, please join us. We'll let you know. It's interesting. We're putting out news as it breaks. So while we try and do this once a week, sometimes it comes out twice a week, and you'll get a notice of that. We hope that, other than butt breathing, that this helps you understand how fast the world is changing, and that we're living this extraordinary time where we can solve any grand challenge. Congratulations to the Visioneering XPRIZE teams for winning Visioneering, and to the entire XPRIZE organization for really accelerating these grand challenges. I'd love to know in the notes here if you have an XPRIZE that you'd love to see in the future. Let us know what it is. Dave, I'm heading to the airport in, I think, 2 hours to head to Saudi.
Crazy.
It's going to be fun. I'll see you and Emad and Salim there. Alex, we will miss you. You'll be there either digitally or in spirit. But
Sounds
we have
great.
quite the week lined up, meeting with the top CEOs from all the AI and tech companies. It's going to be fun. Any favorite meetings you're looking forward to, Dave?
Well, you're kicking it off with the big shots. So, you've got Eric Schmidt, Larry Fink, just like the big money people and the big vision people. So that's going to be such a fast start. But then backstage, it's like, God, it's just like a who's who of incredible people. So I'll be backstage the whole time. It's going to be wild. So thanks for
interestingly
hooking
enough,
it all up.
Yeah, no, a pleasure. I chair FII is out of Saudi. It's the Future Investment Initiative, and I'm on the board there, and I chair their AI activities. One of the things that's going to be interesting this year is we have, I think, 20 something heads of state, and I'm going to be co-chairing a conclave with Emad and Anj Mida from A16Z. And we're going to be talking about how to use AI to accelerate governance for countries. One of the biggest challenges we have, we'll talk about this when we come back, is that the speed of change is so extraordinary and so disruptive in terms of AI and humanoid robots and longevity that countries out there are having a difficult time trying to understand what policies do they put in place. How do they, what do they do best for their nation state, for their citizenry? And so we're going to be announcing a program called Sovereign AI Governance Engine. We'll talk about what that means, but it's really to help people around the world deal with the disruptive change and disruptive opportunity at the speed of AI versus the speed of governments and PDFs. It's going to be good.
And the reason that's coming out in Saudi Arabia in Riyadh is because the deployment rate of ideas like that can be very, very, very fast in those countries, because they make decisions kind of in a very tight knit little, very, very fast moving group, and so that'll be a huge bellwether for Western democracies, because it'll happen there long before it happens in the U.S. and Europe.
Alex, what's the week like for you, buddy?
It's in some sense the same as every week for me, which is trying to accelerate and smooth out the gentle singularity.
Yes, I love that. By the way, our episode on the singularity is now has just done incredibly well. People, I've had people telling me, faculty at UCLA and others saying, I've assigned this to all of my students to listen
No
to
way.
that podcast. Yeah, no,
Wow.
extraordinary. It's really done. It's gone viral. So if you haven't heard that episode, The Singularity is Now, go listen to it. It's the Moonshot Mates at their best. Love you guys. See you on the other side of the pond, Dave, Alex. See you in a week when we're back.
All right.
Sounds great.
All right.
Thanks,
Take
Dave.
care, all.